Okay, welcome to the Village of Lake Bluff's Joint Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals regular meeting on May 21, 2025. If we could have a call to order and roll call, please, Ms. Gable.
Yep. We'll call to order the Village of Lake Bluff's Joint Plan Commission Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Wednesday, May 21st. And for a roll call vote, Member Danley?
Here.
Member Fisher?
Here.
Member Miller?
Here.
Member Russell?
Here.
Member Toll is absent. And then Chair Peters.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
All right. Agenda item number 2 is our non-agenda items and visitors' public comment time. We allocate 15 minutes at this time during the meeting for anyone to approach the panel and discuss an issue, limited discussion, 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, on any matter not on the docket tonight. Anybody wish to proceed? Separately, I would just like to thank Ann Sorensen, who was a very, very significant contributor to the success of the PCZBA over the last several years. She has decided to not accept a further opportunity to stay on the board for personal or professional reasons, but we do want to thank her for all her hard work, her contributions, and the fact that many times she was taking these meetings remotely from her place of employment. So thank you very much, Ann, for your fine service. I don't know if anybody else has any other comments, but I think now would be the time. All right, agenda item number 3, consideration of the April 16, 2025 meeting minutes. Everybody's had a chance to review. Any proposed revisions?
I just have one on the bottom of page 3, second paragraph from the bottom. It says that Mr. Dobbins stated that there is often more vocal opposition than vocal support of the proposal. And I'm sure I've heard him say many, many times that there is more vocal support of the project than there is. So I think that phrasing just got reversed.
Okay.
It's written in here that he said there was more vocal opposition.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that's page 3, second paragraph from the bottom.
Yep.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Fisher.
Same page, second or first true paragraph from the top. Similar question to George's. The last sentence, speaking about Mr. Dobbins, he noted that the neighbors that will be most impacted are supportive. I think some were, and some that were most impacted had mixed opinions. Had a little
I
mixed.
think what he was referring to in that case was the neighbors that looked out their front windows
Okay.
and saw it.
Okay,
I
that whole
believe
paragraph, I was just a little confused
we
about
can
how it.
take a look at that and make sure that
So
that
if you look
wording's
at that
accurate.
paragraph and then jump down to the second true paragraph from the bottom, second line, he noted that the building does not conform, so just grammar there.
Yep.
And then just one last one on page 5. First paragraph, Member Fisher complimented Mr. Whitmer. I think it was Mr. Dobbins.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay.
That's all for me.
Thank you, Member Fisher. Any other comments from the commissioners? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve? Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Agenda item number 4. Ms. Gable, if you'd like to introduce that, please.
Yep. So the Village of Lake Bluff received a zoning variation application from contractor Jeff Tondola on behalf of property owner Manny Hegwar, requesting variations in order to alter an existing non-conforming swimming pool, spa tub, terrace, and deck, all of which do not currently meet the required ravine setbacks at 1800 Shore Acres Drive. Specifically, the proposed work includes changing the size and layout of the pool and the deck and terrace, basically squaring them off, moving the spa tub so it no longer extends completely beyond the top ravine edge, and decreasing the size of the deck to the west. The PCZBA held a public hearing on January 15th, 2025, and continued this matter as updated plans and photos were needed. The matter was continued again in February, March, and April. Since the last public hearing, the applicant has provided drone photos and updated plans, reduced the south portion of the deck and terrace, and has decided to now cantilever the deck on the east side. Variations are still required due to the encroachment of the swimming pool, spa tub, terrace, and deck into the ravine and or required setbacks. And the applicant is here tonight to present their request. As a reminder, the PCZBA is a recommending body in this matter.
All right, who would like to present? And if anyone else wishes to testify during the hearing, I'd like you to stand up, raise your right hand, and we'll swear you in. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Jeff Tondola. So this is the second hearing for this, and we've cleaned up the plans. We've sought advice from a structural engineer to provide a preliminary plan and made the entire project more compliant. So I don't know if you had a chance to review, the plans that were submitted, but they're very detailed in that. The next slide just shows some of the existing site conditions, and I had submitted some fresh drone footage. I don't know if you want to show it or not, but the existing conditions, I wanted to make clear that the existing deck is cantilevered, over the top of the ravine, and it's open underneath, and there should be additional photos to show that. This shows the existing and the proposed, and you can tell that it's out of the ravine area more so than it is currently. But none of it complies with the setbacks regardless. Okay, the proposed plan shows that there's very little change to the pool and pool terrace, and that the deck, the wood deck, is going to be smaller than it is by 320 square feet. And the amount of the deck and terrace to the south is 24 square feet, which is not very much, but it's still headed in the right direction. Okay, here's the slide with the existing conditions below the deck. This is what I don't know if you can see that, what it looks like now. The concrete wall that you see on the slide to the left is the foundation for the existing spa. That will be removed as part of the proposed plan. And the new deck will also be cantilevered, similar to this, only there won't be any piers placed in the ravine past the top of the slope. So the piers that you see here will all be eliminated from the new plan. Well, this is a preliminary plan on how we're hoping to achieve it. We propose doing a soldier pile precast with precast lagging wall at the top of the ravine, and the pool would be built behind it. The deck structure would be attached to the wall and would be cantilevered over the ravine. And the pool and spa equipment will still be in the same place. The stairs are still in the same place. And then once that part is done, the slope can be restored completely back to native. Whatever is disturbed will be restored. I'm not sure how much light will be under the deck, so we're going to have to look at that to see if something will grow under there, or if we place stone under it for erosion control or something like that. But I think this schematic gives you a pretty good idea that the plan is pretty simple and straightforward. So lastly, I still have the same conclusions. We're trying to find the least invasive way to solve the problem. The pool would need to be replaced anyway because it's leaking, so that would have to be part of the plan at some point. And again, we're trying to maximize safety by squaring it off, and we're trying to keep stuff out of the ravine and off of the ravine as much as possible. So I hope the new topographic survey was more clear and you have a better idea of the intent of what we're trying to do. We didn't go to full-on structural design, just preliminary, because that process takes a really long time and is expensive. So I didn't want to go down that journey until I knew we were going to be allowed to do this. But that would be the next steps once we're approved. So do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Tandola. And I know in your submissions, you address the standards for variation. What we'll do is we'll adopt and incorporate those by reference, so you don't have to go through those again. You might have gone through them the first time, I can't recall. And I just preliminarily, before the commissioners start to ask you some questions, the cantilever approach, as a non-engineer, makes a lot of sense to me. I'm sure others on the commission might advise if I'm wrong, but.
Can we give a definition?
It means that instead of having piers on the outside of the deck to support it, that we can hang the whole deck from the wall. So it means less earth disruption in the ravine. Engineering-wise, we know that we can do it. I ran it through enough with the structural engineers, so we know that it's feasible and possible. But
Mr.
I
Russell,
think it'll be.
I don't have any questions,
the cantilever,
comments if anyone
cantilever aspect, does that make?
makes
Engineering
perfect
sense?
sense to me.
Okay. Good. Who'd like to start?
I can start. Believe me, I'm not a knowledgeable person in this. I think if the engineers feel this is a feasible project and something that's already been done prior to our approval, I don't have a lot of objections to what you plan on doing. Again, it has to be approved by the engineers who know what they're doing. But it's already been approved in the past or done in the past, and I see no reason why you can't update what's already been done. And I think there's certain conditions we'd apply, like cleaning up and vegetation and so forth, but that can be added on when you come back.
Right, that would be all part of the plan for.
Thank you, Member Miller. Member Fisher?
I don't really have questions. It seems like a, valid, way of reducing the impact on the ravine and hanging sort of, the construction, so.
Thank you, Member Fisher. Member Danley?
No, I agree. I think the hardship is very clear that there's leaking and there's erosion, and the placement of it, to begin with, was something that needed to be changed. And my question was, has an engineer evaluated in the section plan? So you stated that they have.
They
and
have.
I'm sure they'll be working alongside you moving
Oh,
forward.
absolutely, yes.
And, nothing, I'm sure, would get approved other than that. Cantilevering is definitely the best way to do it. You definitely have the space to do it and the structure to support it. So, I'm in favor of it. If there's anything as we continue to talk that we need to add to it for the approval, we'll come back and talk.
Okay.
Thank you, Member Danley. Member Russell?
I don't have any objections to the project. As you noted, you're pulling the deck back significantly, several hundred square feet out of the ravine. You're completely eliminating the old spa, which was completely in the ravine before, and it just barely touches the ravine slope now. The pool is essentially going in the same place. And you're working on a ravine slope that was probably significantly disturbed when the home was built 40 years ago, whenever it was. So
yeah.
I don't have any objections at all. You're locked into where the house is, and you're just trying to replace what you had before, but you're doing it in a manner that's friendlier to the ravine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. And I would echo the other commissioners' comments that, we provided some guidance back in January. You took that guidance very, very seriously. There's a little bit of a reduction in square footage, and as Member Russell indicated, all sorts of other changes in the dimensions. So I think it's tremendous, the modifications that you've come up with.
Thank you very much.
We're a recommending body, but are we prepared to address possible conditions?
Well, just to follow up on Elliot's comment, I don't really think we need to imply conditions that the ravine slope is going to be stabilized, because I'm sure that the village staff, as part of the building permit, is going to require you to stabilize the ravine slope. So that would be a normal requirement of the building permit, so I'm not aware of any special conditions that we need to impose, and I'm perfectly willing to make the motion to, in fact, I will move to recommend the village board approve the requested leaf in the form of the attached approval order.
Thank you, Member Russell.
The cleanup is part of the proposal, and that's in the guidelines that we have to follow, that whatever you destroy, you fix, or you clean up. That's part of the approval process, right? We don't have to
Yeah.
add that. That's already in.
Yeah, it would be part of the building permit.
Okay. Then I second the motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I guess just so the record's clear, that the village engineer, Mr. Hanson, has gone out there and evaluated the site again, and I think the report he came back was favorable also, so.
Oh, okay.
Could we call the vote, please?
Yep. Member, just to confirm, there was a second, right?
Yes.
There was a
Member Miller.
Second, yeah. Member Danley?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Miller?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
And Chair Peters?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes.
Next steps for the petitioner.
Yeah, I'll definitely be in touch, but we have the ability to bring the request to the village board for first reading approval on Wednesday of next week, so a week from today, if you would be available for that, but we can talk tomorrow about that.
Absolutely.
Great.
And then just one question for my own edification, Mr. Tandola. How deep down does the concrete support go? The one that will support the pool and everything?
It hasn't been completely figured out. I would suspect that it's going to go as deep as the deep end of the pool, at least on a portion of it, and step up.
Taper up, so
Yeah.
to speak? Okay, no, just
Although you won't see any of it, it'll all be below grade.
Thank you. All right,
All right,
thank you very much.
thank you.
Agenda item number 5.
All right. So yes, agenda item number 5 is for a zoning text amendment for outdoor storage in the L1 district. So as you may recall, the PCZBA approved a special use permit for van repair expert last year. At this hearing, the PCZBA noted existing outdoor storage in the area north of State Route 176 and east of US Route 41, and discussed a possible text amendment allowing for outdoor storage in this area, provided it was behind the building, screened by a fence, and that stored materials did not exceed the height of the fence. In early 2025, village staff worked with Douglas & Co. tenant at 35 North Skokie Highway and current outdoor storage user to draft a potential text amendment to allow outdoor storage in the L1 district, as I mentioned, north of State Route 176 and east of US Route 41, following ABR review. And during these discussions, Douglas & Co. saw the existing L1 requirement that all loading and unloading areas must be fully enclosed within a building, and they asked for that language to be amended as well to allow loading and unloading areas that are not wholly enclosed within a building, just in this general area. And I believe the applicant is here tonight to present the request, and as a reminder, the PCZBA is a recommending body in this matter.
Hello, I'm David Douglas. I'm the tenant at 35 North Skokie Highway.
Yeah, just before you get started, Mr. Douglas, let's swear you in. If you could raise your right hand, and do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please proceed.
And the village brought to my attention that I rented 35 North Skokie Highway. Same owner for also 419 West Washington. I rented the north half of that north portion of that outdoor property as storage as part of my lease at 35 North Skokie Highway. So at the time when I signed the lease, I thought it was cool because he was renting it as that purpose. The village pointed it out. So I'm hoping to change the language so that outdoor storage would be allowed there. If you can see the satellite images, there's really no, the neighbors are all commercial in nature. And there's also an exhibit, it's been that way since at least 2005. So I'm hoping that could be approved.
Thank you. All right, any questions for Mr. Douglas?
What will you be storing?
We're a landscape masonry company, so it'll just be like hard goods, pallets of stone. That's about it.
Any chemicals or pollutants?
Nope. Yeah, we don't use any chemicals in our line of work. Now, we do have an inside building for stuff that, if there is something that's chemical, it'll be in our building at 35 North.
Okay, so I think that should be included in any approval, that only non-toxic non-chemicals, just safe stuff should be out there. Put it simply. It says here, safe conditions. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Member Miller. Member Danley.
I really don't have any questions or any concerns with it, as long as Yeah, I really don't.
Thank
I don't
you.
have anything further to add.
Member Fisher,
Pretty much the same, no questions.
Member Russell.
Do you know at this point if you're going to intend to replace the chain link fence that is out there with the rather tattered fabric, or?
It is on my list of things to do to put in the green PVC fence slats as opposed to the not attractive green screen that's up there now. So I plan to replace that.
You haven't, he hasn't gone to the architectural board of review
No,
yet, right? So
and
they-
based on this language, that would be required, so they may require something different than that for the fencing.
Okay?
Yeah, I was gonna offer up a suggestion in the guidelines that are being suggested that it just says a fence, wall, or landscaping, and I don't think chain link fencing is acceptable, or anything that has large openings, because you're not really screening the type of material you have out there, and I think just by adding the word opaque,
Or solid,
that might
yeah.
take care of it. Although I will say that not only your property, but all of the properties out there that are in the village, that are in the light industrial zone, are just littered with noncompliance. But I think that this is the best, not your own doing. They were assigned long, long ago the same zoning, into the same zoning district as our bigger lots on the south side of 176 along Waukegan Road.
Right.
So practically everything you do, or any of the other lot owners would do, is going to violate a zoning regulation in terms of putting material outside. And I think this is probably, in the short term, an elegant solution to allow the architectural board of review to allow storage if it is properly screened. But that's going to be up to them. And if they decide to let you have a chain link fence with plastic slats in it, that's their call. It's going to be under their bailiwick if this gets approved. But given the entire area needs a rework of the zoning, but we've also got plans within the next 10 years if the interchange project moves forward, and the first phase is starting already with the new access road going up the backside of that area that you're in. At that time, I think the village will probably rework the zoning and the regulations for that entire area. But giving the architectural board of review the authority to modify even these suggested regulations is the cleanest thing to do in the short term, in my opinion. So I'm in favor of what's being proposed.
Great.
Oh, thank you, Member Russell. Yeah, I really didn't have any other comments or suggestions with respect to your petition. Any further discussion among the commissioners? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to proceed as stated in the proposal to allow for outdoor storage pending the architectural review board decide on the design of the fence, which is already in here.
And did you want your clarification about no outside storage of hazardous materials?
I think it's in here already.
Oh, is it in there?
Yeah, that the outdoor storage area must be maintained in a clean, sanitary, and safe condition that prevents harborage of rodents or similar pests.
Okay.
It'd probably be covered under that one, and again, the AVR could always make additional.
I mean, we could put and no hazardous materials, period, into the proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we I would prefer if we just added in no hazardous
Yeah.
materials.
Any concern, Mr. Douglas?
Not at all.
Just to clarify, did you also want Member Russell's comments about adding the word opaque?
That's fine. Yeah, that works for me.
I'm not sure, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Okay, Member Fisher,
Aye.
Member Miller,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Danley,
Aye.
and Chair Peters.
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
next
Okay.
steps.
Okay, so yeah, we'll
Thank you so much
be
for-
in touch about next steps, but this will likely go to the village board next Wednesday if you would be available for that meeting or someone from your group. We can talk about it after this, though,
Okay,
definitely.
great.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item number, what, 6, 7,
Number 6.
6?
Yes, so this is an informal review. Property owner Jonathan Bosch, did I say it right? Okay, of 511 Lansdowne Lane is seeking an informal review of his potential project to install a 6-foot fence on his property. I did give some background in the staff memo, but this is part of a discussion that Mr. Bosch has had with staff and with the village board about allowing fences within the Lansdowne subdivision where they are currently not allowed. So this came up at the last village board meeting, that he would also potentially like to have a taller fence than would be allowed. So, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the background. Yeah, I was here last week at the village board meeting and got approval to put in a fence at our property. And then I think later found out that due to the way that the lot is positioned, it's a corner lot, that my understanding was back and side yards could have 6-foot fences and front yards 4-foot fences. And our lot is a corner lot, and what I would consider our side and back lot is on Moffett Road. Our front yard is on Lansdowne Lane. I'm not sure if you have a picture of the survey, but I submitted that. So I was just seeking approval to have my side yard as a 6-foot fence, which is on Moffett Road, because it's on Moffett Road. And it's, we're looking to do some landscaping work to clear out the buckthorn and make it so it, and replenish that property and make it nice. But with 4-foot screening, we don't want people just looking into, we want some privacy into our backyard. Our neighbors, I walked it this weekend, and so Lansdowne Lane is on the south side of Lake Bluff, and between Cambridge and the ravine, there's every fence that's there on Moffett Road is 6-foot fence. And for obvious reasons, it's just a very busy street. And as you can see, it doesn't actually show up that well on this one.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't.
The front of our property is actually on Lansdowne. There's our driveways on Lansdowne on the right. I can't see it from here, but it is. We have a driveway on Lansdowne on the northeast corner of the lot. So it is our backyard, which is that green area. So that's the request.
Yeah, and just to clarify on this, the green area is what would be considered the front yard, so that's where a fence would be limited to 4 feet in height, and then the red area would be up to 6 feet in height. And I only showed those two sides because it was mentioned that he was looking at a fence along the west and south property lines.
Yes.
So it's gonna be a 6-foot fence, the whole green, is that
The green and the red.
in the red? I see.
And Lansdowne Lane, again, is the front of our property. So that's, all that area on the south side, the bottom part of the picture is all our backyard.
And this partially goes back to the fact that our code defines the front property line and the front yard as the shorter of the two frontages for corner lots.
And the reason for 2 colors?
Just indicating where a 6-foot fence could go per
Oh, I
code
see.
and where a 4-foot fence
I
could
see, so
go.
it's allowed on part of the property, but not the whole property.
Yeah, it's allowed on a portion of it for what
Sarah,
is.
why is it bending around? Why would they only allow green around the
Oh,
court?
because that's considered still within the
Still the
front
front?
yard. The front yard per the code is anything basically from the front of the principal structure to the front lot line or from the principal structures.
So that's a city one, not a Lansdowne subdivision rule, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And just for reference, I walked down Moffett all the way into the town. I mentioned everything with 6 foot feet on, from the Cambridge to the ravine. I think I only saw one lot on Moffett that had a 4 foot fence, and it was clearly a house that, it really was a front yard for that house. Every other fence was 6 feet that I walked on Moffett.
Does Lansdowne have a fence ordinance?
It does, but I was at the village board meeting last week and was approved to have a fence. And so after a fairly involved discussion, the board approved my property having a yard because of the landscaping work I was intending to do on this property. And it's part of that conversation, I think it was somewhat assumed. Somebody asked me, if I recall, it's maybe in the minutes, if I was putting up a 6 foot fence, or I think I said yes, but then I also said within the regulations. And I think my understanding, and probably, I don't want to infer, but, well, this is my opinion. I believe that the committee also felt that I was likely to be able to put a 6 foot fence. That was the intent. Again, I'm inferring. George, you were there, and Claire, you were there. You can weigh in. But I only later found out the next day, Clara gave me a call and said, well, you're a corner lot, and so technically that's the front of your house, and the front of your house, because it's a corner lot, is only 4 foot. So I need to go back to the village in 2 weeks or next week, and with this committee's approval, get a 6 foot fence on the Moffett side. But it's not actually the front of my house, but it's, I guess, technically it's the front of my house.
If I may add, when Lansdowne was approved 20 years ago, I guess almost now, time flies, it was controversial for those of you that might have been involved, in some of the neighbors, because before there was just the big estate home down on the lake, and all of the people around Lansdowne essentially looked into a forest, and they were very sad that the forest was going away. And so a proposal was developed to not allow fences on the perimeter within a certain distance. The fences would have to be set way in, which would cut off, huge portions of their yard. But that's what was approved. But now, 20 years later, the village board is willing to waive that requirement and allow the fences. In fact, strangely enough, except for the applicant's yard, because it's E2 zone, all the other properties in Lansdowne could even put 6 foot fences in their front yard. Certainly hope it doesn't happen, because that would change the appearance of the entire, that's such a beautiful subdivision.
Yes.
If someone decides to stockade fence in their entire property. So I hope that doesn't trigger anything like that, because they would be, you're not in an E2 zone, but the other people would be able to do that. But while I'm talking, as the applicant noted, historically, for whatever reason, not because of zoning variations, but there have been stockade fences existing at the entrance to Lakeland, at the entrance to Cambridge, at the entrance to Forest Cove, for decades and decades and decades. So he's really not asking for anything more than what everyone else already is doing on Moffett, on the east side of the road. So for that reason, I would be voting in favor of a variation. Unfortunately, you have to go through the technical approval process, but I would certainly vote for it.
Thank you.
What's the length of the fence or the fences?
Frankly, I only got approval to put in a fence last week, so I was in the process of having somebody design and build the fence, but
Okay.
I came here first once I realized that I didn't actually get the full approval. So I don't know. I think I'd have to measure it. I just don't know.
And you're classified as E2 as far as lot size?
I'm not sure.
The zoning.
Zoning is,
Zoning, he's in E2 lot.
but all your neighbors are E1.
Everyone else in the Lansdowne subdivision, because to the north, it's kind of, I think it was in here, let me see.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
first 200 feet, first
So
200 feet. Yeah,
in
there's
the
a-
Lansdowne subdivision to the north of this property is HOA, like a strip of HOA property. And then all the other homes further to the east are E1.
So we're
This is
we're
not
E,
showing
we're
up great
E2.
on there, but.
You're E2,
Yeah,
the
it's just,
darker
it's a
purple.
zoning category, that would allow for the fences that we're talking about, but your neighbors would be allowed.
And
That 6
just maybe for background, I think some of you heard this last week, but to get the village's approval last week to construct a fence at all, given the 20-year history, I received I first received a signed authorization of support from every home on Lansdowne Lane, which was 7 houses, including my own, and that of the homeowners president. We submitted all that as part of our packet last week. I had personal discussions with every homeowner on Lansdowne. I did not get the impression that there was a single homeowner looking for a front fence, or frankly, any fences, because I think we all want to beautify our neighborhood. We're very proud of it. We have a homeowner association. I did mention last week to the village board, we've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in landscaping, and really over the past 20 years, I think buckthorn is really crowded out. I think a lot of my oaks are dying. I've cleared out dozens of them. I've only owned the property for just 13 months, and just about a year. And I'm trying to improve the overall landscaping, planting a lot of native species in the area. I want to beautify the land. But to do that, as soon as I clear out all the buckthorn, Moffett Road is literally, in my backyard, and, a handful of oak trees that are remaining and just a bunch of open spaces. For security reasons, for privacy reasons, it's just not really tenable. And so that was some of the discussion last week. So just to give this committee some perspective, I am investing a lot of money in that property, and I think the 6-foot fence is just in line with what everyone else has in that neighborhood, and feels like a bit of a technicality because it's not really a front of my house, and nor do I intend to put any fence in the front of my house. And as far as I'm aware, none of our neighbors on Lansdowne intend to put a front fence.
No, it seems certainly reasonable from my perspective, especially considering the history along Moffett.
Thank you.
I guess what you're gonna gain from this discussion tonight is our general consensus. There's not a formal petition pending, obviously, but I think there's no objection from the commissioners, so.
Okay.
Is there a way of bypassing coming back?
Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, we'll have to go through the public hearing process, so I can reach out tomorrow with what that entails. But I think if we get in an application soon, we can put it on the agenda for probably June, as long as you have all the fence details that you're looking for.
Oh, so what's this? So I have to put in, I have to do another application?
So this was an informal
Okay.
review, and the formal, when we talked, we kind of talked about that, but this is just to see what the
Yeah,
PCZBA
sorry, but I
felt.
thought I could get on the agenda for next week to start going on this, so I can't get on next week's agenda?
There's 2 separate things. The next week agenda is for the village board, so that's for that subdivision portion, and now this new application would be for this variation. So this was informal, this will be the formal process for that.
Oh, so I have to come back to this committee for the formal process?
Yes.
And then,
Yes.
so do I need to do anything next week at the board meeting?
2 separate things. Yes,
Okay.
but I can
This will
explain.
be my fourth trip up here to get a fence.
I can explain in more detail.
And everybody's signature in my neighborhood, and this has been the most lengthy process, just for whatever, say, this body has on these, this is a very frustrating process as just a homeowner trying to invest and improve their property. This is a lot of work to get a fence. I understand everybody here is busy, but 4 Wednesday nights to get a fence approved is, and I can't tell you how much time I've invested to get a fence. So I appreciate the consideration and the support, but this is a lot, for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, please.
Yep. All right, so property owner Graham Holland of 206 East Prospect is seeking an informal review of his potential project to replace his detached garage. Let me get this off. So yeah, if you wanna step up.
Yeah, if you could state your name for the record, sir, and your address, please.
Graham Halen, 206 East Prospect Avenue.
Thank you.
It's
Yeah,
informal.
please proceed with a brief overview. Oh, we
Oh,
don't even have to
did you
swear
want-
you in because we're informal.
Oh, it's informal, so we have to do that. Fantastic.
You're still told, tell the
Yeah.
truth on it.
Well,
You need to
I
put
assure you.
in any fences while we're at it?
I actually replaced, ours is already fenced.
Okay, good.
So we're good. I wish I was up here about a pool or a spa. That'd be a lot more fun. I have my wife and I have 206 East Prospect. It's a 100-year-old house, which we love. We have a detached garage, which I believe the previous owner, the Goodmans, who were longstanding citizens, put in at the back of the property. It's a 20 by 20 garage. And at the moment where my wife and I would like to have a usable garage, really that's our main focus. Right now, the 18 by 18, I measured the opening this afternoon. It's 6.5 feet, so it's only about here. My wife, we have 5 kids, so we have big cars. So we can't fit cars in the garage. So not only can we not actually, our cars don't even, they're too tall. I had a smaller car at one point, and that car couldn't fit in the garage. I had to try and go in sideways, and it wouldn't work. So it's also turned. If you can see on there, it's the entrance to the garage is coming from the east. It faces east, so you have to come into the driveway and then make a left turn at the back of the property to try and get into the garage, which we are not able to do. So we would love to pull that. Oh, not only that, but the foundation in the garage is at this point the cracks. There's my kids are stubbing toes and they're running around in bikes, and so they grab their bikes. So they're I have to redo that foundation, but there's really no way to redo the foundation without pulling the thing down. So we are pretty close to our limit for the term escapes me, but the structure, the amount of square footage a structure is allowed to take on the property. So we'd be asking for a minor variance to take the garage down and build a new garage that actually faces south. So we would turn that garage and we would put it in the northeast corner of where it says concrete apron. That is all finished driveway. So we would we'd really be reducing our sort of impermeable surface by moving the garage actually onto the driveway and turning it so we could actually drive into it. That's what we're proposing. That's what we'd like to do. So I provided, I don't know if you got to see that, I provided sort of a little written explanation. But as one of the other, the architect spoke, there's a lot of money to do the formal review, getting the architects and everyone involved. We will do that, but sort of wanted to know that we had an opportunity, we'd be allowed to potentially do this. So for us, it's really just use case. We just like to be able to use it. Winters can be harsh, snow can be frustrating, so the ability to park in a garage would be great. So we can't really do that without moving it.
What's the dimension of the proposed new garage?
So it's two-part. It's I think the overall dimension is 26 by 35. And so, yeah, 26 to the back, 35 wide, which leaves about 15 or 16 feet on the west side of the garage left. And I included a picture of the proposed garage style that we would use. We match the house, but it would be, a 2-car garage with like two individual doors and sort of a small, on the side of it, it would be set back a small, I think it's 8 by 12, sort of like a little workshop that adds on to the garage. I build furniture and remodel the house and stuff like that my own, so tools and such. So, I believe the variance that we'd be asking for, the minor variance on the square footage, would be 11%. increase. We actually had the village engineer, Jeff Hansen, came out as well and said that he saw no issue with stormwater runoff or drainage either, as long as the gutters did not go towards the east neighbor.
So just to clarify these dimensions, because that was my big question mark, and looking
Sure.
at what was turned in, there really weren't any dimensions.
Oh, okay.
But there was a stated variation need of 11% on floor area, which is getting up there. I mean, you're actually asking for a structure that's about twice as large as what any of the new homes at the village have been built in the last 20 years on these same size lots, 50 by 125.
Okay.
You're allowed 440 square feet. So I'm a little concerned with the concept of granting you that type of variation
Okay.
because I don't see what the hardship would be. I understand that you need a better garage than what you have, because 18 and a half by 18 and a half outside dimensions is not enough
Right.
for two cars, clearly. But a 35-foot width across, I mean, right now, the standard approved garage in our code for these detached garages is 22 by 20. A 22 by 22 would be a nicer garage, perhaps even a 24. But when you start talking about adding a workshop area on back there, I'm
It's
a little
really,
bit concerned
yeah.
with the total, concerned about how we would justify giving you a variation. What's the hardship that you're incurring that no one else with this size lot? Why wouldn't we then allow everyone to build that much structure in the rear yard, 900 more square feet?
yeah.
And plus, I mean, I just scaled your picture because I didn't know what it was, but if that, do you know what just the garage portion of it is?
Yeah, I have
Is
it.
that,
I have it pulled up here.
how wide
So
is?
the total, I do apologize. I included a link on that Word document, which I realize was not helpful because it's a Word document. So that was my mistake in not including dimensions. That was, but I did not have. So it's, sorry, and I'm just correct myself. It's 34 by 26. So the actual garage itself, is 25 by 25.
Yeah, so that's a huge, very nice two-car garage. That's without your additional workshop area there off to the side.
Yeah.
And then, at least the scale, if you're building one like this, if you build a structure that's at 25-foot width, the height's going to be over you're only allowed to go up 17 feet.
Right.
And then I also understand you don't want to comply with the 5-foot setback rules. According to your application, you want to put it within 1 foot of
I just
the property
wanted,
line.
I'd like the garage to stay at the same place with the same line. I mean, the garage that is currently, I might have misspoke. I talked to Clara about this week. I might have misspoke. When we closed on the house, they had talked about a variance. And I thought it was about the garage, and I might be wrong on that because Clara mentioned that she wasn't able to find anything that really said, I just want to keep the garage at the same.
Yeah, the survey that you submitted shows it's 2.5 feet off the rear property line.
Yeah.
And that's what you would like to do? And then, how about
Yep.
where you're shoving it to on the easterly side? Do you want a variation? Because it's supposed to be 5 feet off the lot line.
For every side.
What's that?
Yeah.
2.5 feet?
So you're saying for every side, 5 feet from every direction?
The code right now requires 5 feet off the rear lot line
Okay.
and then 5 feet off the east lot line, which is where you want to put it.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to
I'm
back.
just trying to collect information because none of
I'd
it
like to
was
answer
in your,
that.
none of it was
Yeah.
in your packet here.
Right.
So is it 2.5 and 2.5? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, I appreciate if you forgive me because there's not like a guide on what I'm supposed to provide. So this is a learning experience for me. That's why it's the informal. I'm trying my best. I don't do this very often. The problem with, if we come 5 feet off of that east line, I can't back out, I'll hit my house.
I might disagree knowing,
I drive a
Knowing the number
I
of-
drive a pickup truck, I mean.
but knowing the number of homes that have been built on the 50 by 125 foot.
With all due respect.
be difficult.
With all due respect, my property is unique. I have, 17 feet there. I wouldn't be able to back out of the garage and then cut and turn past the house.
You
But
would.
you disagree, and that's
would.
okay.
You would, and I only disagree because I know that there are several dozen new homes built over the last decade that are built on 50 by 125 foot lots, just like yours.
Okay?
Your home 100 years ago, the west side of your house is actually only 1.5 feet off the property line, so you probably have more room on the proposed driveway side than some of these new lot owners. So yeah, I agree, it's not convenient. In thinking it through, I started thinking, maybe we should be considering a text amendment to allow detached garages on these smaller lots to go to 2.5 feet. I certainly I would never vote for something less than that, because you need to be able to maintain the side of your garage from your property. You shouldn't be allowed to build a garage, and then every time you need to paint the garage, you need to go on the neighbor's lot to do it.
Okay.
So I would be in favor of just throwing this out for discussion, but 2.5 foot and 2.5 foot setbacks that I think everyone would benefit on these smaller lots. Because that space between the rear of the home and the garage is precious.
Wi-Fi,
There's very little backyard, and I'm sure we've all been in and seen these things. And maybe we should consider relaxing that rule, because it really is a dead space back there. And you really only need enough to get it built, and then to be able to maintain it, wash the side. You want to have enough distance so that if the gutters are clogged, the water falls on your property and you have to deal with it. If you put anything closer, the water's going to fall on the neighbor's yard, and they're going to have to deal with it. So for starters, I don't know how everybody feels about maybe considering a text amendment to free up more space in everyone's yard for these, on these smaller lots,
And is that for
as opposed to just granting the variation here, because if someone else comes in and I feel like we have to grant it to them, I know it's not precedent setting according to the attorney, but what would be our justification? Because I actually think you have probably a little bit more room than a lot of the people do have with the new homes. And it's difficult. I mean, I would suggest that rather than having the two doors with this big, it looks great with the post in the middle, but when you are having difficulty maneuvering out with the second car to the west, you don't want to have to be dealing with that center post. You should just have a garage that's got an 18-foot wide garage door. It's oversized, standard is 16 feet, but you can have an 18-foot wide garage door, and it would make your life much easier from here on out if you build a new garage, not to have to worry about, as you're trying to make the turn to get the car east, a center post in the way, and this one looks like it's a 2-foot to 3-foot separation, and you're just making yourself, creating more problems.
Okay.
Architecturally, it looks good.
A major focus was, I wanted it to look, if you can see it from the street, I wanted it to look really nice. I wanted to match the house and blend in, so that was a huge part of why I did it. It's more expensive to do it that way. But foolishly thought that really a big part of it would be, we want it to be aesthetically pleasing, live in a town that people care about.
But
so.
you do realize that by having a design like this, you're shoving the westerly bay furtherly west. At the same time, you're making the argument that it's going to be very difficult to me to get the car easterly in my lot to get you.
I understand.
They're working against each other, so it makes no sense to me. But
Understood.
Anyway, I've done enough talking, although I guess I would I would still feel that you got to lower the peak so that it complies with the height regulations. And maybe you hadn't even talked about height regulations.
You know, I am aware of the regulations, and when I was getting, you know, I'm aware of it, and I plan to make sure it does not exceed that.
Just because we're supposed to treat everyone on an equal basis. And I'm just not seeing the hardship, quote unquote, on your lot that differs from any other 50 by 125 foot lot. They're all tough.
Okay.
So, I mean, it does, so number one, you have to decide, you know, how much you want. I mean, I don't know how the 11% variation number was developed, but that's like 700 and almost 800 square feet of structure back there. So
I can't.
that's huge.
Okay.
It's huge compared to what's allowed. So I wouldn't deem it a minor variation for an accessory structure. It's actually, technically, it meets the definition of minor because it's under 25%, but you're asking for something that's almost 50%, again, as much as what anybody else would be allowed in their yard. So that's my thinking. I don't.
Who else would like to?
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with the idea maybe of a text amendment, because once we do say it's okay here, I think it is gonna be kind of, well, then I'm the next one that would like some additional. I guess, yeah, one of my questions was, I thought that the original garage or area was like I thought it was 1 foot off the property line.
Well, that's what the written application says, but the survey shows it's 2.5
Okay,
feet.
that's where you got the other, okay. And then I was wondering why it would necessarily equate to move it, you know, that's a variance again, not just an automatic variance, kind of. And yeah, I would just want to make sure that the neighbor, you know, the neighbor's alerted, the neighbor to the east is alerted to the fact that whatever the distance is, I like the idea maybe of doing 2.5 feet and 2.5 feet in the back. I agree with, although it's not nearly as pretty to have one door, I've worked with builders over the time that have had to take out those center things because the turn ratios and such are not very easy to do on our 50-foot lots. So I'm agreeing that you might have to sacrifice the good looks, you know, just maybe for functionality. And, you know, and if there is a way that additional little portion of workshop, again, it looks great, but I'm just afraid that it's just getting too big. But I do like the look of it and everything. It's just that we need to kind of keep the rules consistent. So I guess that's where I am.
So that's probably the hardship for you too, right? Like, so what is that magic number that would get us all saying, you know,
Yeah.
hey, yay for you, you know?
Yeah,
approve.
hardship is
So-
is a tough term, because for me, it's a hardship, but,
Right.
you know, I've got, like I said, we've got 5 kids, I've got 7 bikes, 2 cars, 7 bikes. I can't keep the bikes outside, you know, they rust, they break. So for me, it is a hardship. But I understand that that's not everyone's perspective. So, yeah, I mean, I'd like to figure out what's possible, I suppose, would be the next step. But, yeah, I mean, that's the tough part for me. You know, and there's really massive trees on that lot line, so it does narrow it at the driveway. So,
Your neighbor to the east, where is their garage?
it's set back in the northeast corner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we went and talked to every neighbor, and they all were, I showed them pictures and everything and gave them dimensions. They all were very supportive.
Yeah, I guess, you know, as a commission and as a village, the FAR is figure that we take very seriously.
Okay.
And it kind of creates I think, a nicer looking Lake Bluff, so to speak, because we don't have tremendous mass on the relatively smaller lots. I know it'd be tough with young kids to hang your bikes. But, you know, that might be one way that you could reduce your footprint. But, you know, an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old can't get their bike down, obviously.
Yeah, they're all under the age of 12, so it makes
Yeah.
it tough.
Well, it'll definitely be a big upgrade just to even have the ability to have a car going into the stall, you know, so having, I mean, I hope we can encourage you to move forward to get your garage to at least have a lot of the things that you can't do now, right? So I mean, I'm sure we'll approve a garage at a largest two-car garage we could think of. Look up designer doors, by the way. There's some really great doors out there. So don't give up on making it look good just because you don't have this blockage in the center. So,
Okay.
I mean,
trying to
I'm
encourage.
just throwing this out there since this is an informal discussion, but I could possibly live with a garage that's 24 by 26, 26 wide. I don't think you want to come out 26. You know, these sizes that you're proposing, if you come out 26 feet, that's that much closer you have to come to the house before you can start turning the car. And I mean, I thought the primary focus of your whole thrust here was to be able to get that westerly car out and around the house.
That's
And the
true.
further your walls come out on the side, that's 2 more feet or 4 more feet beyond standard than where you would normally be able to start swinging your car as much as you want. So, but I mean, I think, given the conditions, I could possibly live with a 24-foot deep by 26-foot wide garage. That would give you a 6-foot wide corridor and I'm assuming you would put it on the westerly side of your garage
Okay.
to line up bikes on the ground if you want. And, you know, this is an informal discussion, so we haven't formally heard from any of the neighbors. You know, the process, if you go forward, the village would send a notice out to everyone with 250 feet, and, you know, we'd be notifying them that you're possibly, I think, going to be asking for like 250 more square feet, or whatever that number is, in the rear yard than you'd normally be allowed. And we just have to see how the neighborhood reacts, because we're supposed to listen to public testimony before we vote.
Yep.
And once again, it's all a matter of trying to come up with equitable solutions for everyone. So at some point, I think we need to ratchet it in a little bit. I'm sure it's not what you wanted to hear when you got here, but I think giving you a garage that could be 26 feet wide is pretty darn nice.
Okay.
In terms of the area. I mean, I have a 2-car garage that's 18 by 18. I mean, we get in and out, but we go straight out. So I know that extra 6 feet of width would give you a nice platform for storage, for things like bikes. And once again, just all discussion items at this
Right.
point, but
Understood.
Is the square footage of the house approximately 2,500?
I think it's a little shy. I'd have to look at my paperwork, but there's been so many additions, and as you can see, there's like lots of little juts out, that I believe when I bought it, it was in like the 24, right around 24, but it's about there. It's pretty close.
Yeah, I think, because
it says
2,500.
it's right there, 12 square feet short.
Oh, so 2488.
Right, Claire, was that a number pulled from the village files?
Yeah,
That
the
said
number
he was-
pulled from the village files, the principal structure has a FAR of approximately 2,468 square feet. And that was based on the paperwork from the last edition that was done, I believe.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Time.
And we can discuss next steps if you decide to move forward with that. Great. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Have a good night. Okay.
Okay, agenda item number 9, or number 8, I guess.
number
Workshop, comprehensive plan action items. If you could give us an overview, Clara, please.
Yeah. So at our last meeting, the PCZBA discussed the important next steps of prioritizing action items from the implementation section of the draft comprehensive plan. And I think during the meeting, we mentioned that this could possibly be done at this May meeting. And so the implementation section notes each fundamental planning goal and the cost, duration, priority, and lead/partner agencies associated with each goal. So staff reviewed the goals and created the following top priority list, which was included in your packets. And the PCZBA can decide an order of importance in relation to each of these goals, along with any ways in which these goals may be accomplished. And really anything else related to this, so. Let me see. I have the document with all the goals, but that is like 13 pages, so I don't think that's super helpful, but let me pull the, memo that had the top goals that we had listed. I can put it up here. And that's the agenda item 8 memo in your packet. So those are up here. I didn't want to number them just because I didn't want to give the idea that this is an order of importance. But I believe there are 10 and then 2 kind of subcategory items.
Can I just ask, on the recruit a developer for 611 Walnut and 33 East North, what progress is there with that?
Yeah, so the RFP is out, and I believe responses are due by the end of the month. So that one is,
Is that to sell the village property? Some of it's village property.
so it's an RFP for reuse or redevelopment of those properties.
Is the property's owned by the village right now?
Yes.
So we could put a 3-story condo building there too, right?
We'd have to look at the, based on the comp plan, that might be difficult.
North side of North. Or south side of North.
So you want us to prioritize?
Yeah, I think just having a conversation of kind of what we're trying to get from this is what you guys want to see as like the first things that we tackle from this list of action items. These were all in the high category ranking wise. There's others that are in the high category as well. It's a little bit difficult because some are more as development comes along, these goals should be met. And so it's harder to kind of take action items from those necessarily. And there's also some that are continue to do this and again, less action oriented. So these are the ones that our village administrator and I took a look at and kind of determined as action items that we could, that would be a higher priority that we can start to work on.
Okay, so I have another question then. The second one, undertake a zoning assessment with a special focus on R5. What does that entail dollar-wise and time-wise? I mean, obviously, that's a hire somebody or hire a firm to do that, and do we have even the money to do that kind of thing, or?
So that one, let me pull what that was in the actual, because the time and duration were labeled in that implementation section.
Right.
But I think there's a few different ways that could be done. With the review that was done by Opticos and certain parts of that were taken with the comp plan, they identified some very specific things to tackle right off the bat. So it could just be identifying those right away, or it could be something deeper. As you mentioned, that could cost more and could require a consultant. So that could potentially be a policy decision for the village board, but there's different ways to approach that.
Okay.
Definitely.
Would we ever consider joining forces with the ABR on, like, I'm just looking at this top 10, and it seems like there's a lot of overlap, like conclude block 1 streetscaping enhancements, establish density urban design expectations for future development, talking about the residential character through design and land planning techniques. I'm wondering if we should ever have a group session with the ABR to talk about some of these priorities that seem to overlap, or is that just me? Feel like it might be beneficial.
Yeah, I think on some of these, definitely having like a joint workshop could be an option.
Well, you can go through each one and decide which one that should be, and then the stuff that's for our purview, we can prioritize that.
Yeah, and it can kind of be in a number of different formats. It can be taking these and labeling them 1 through 10. It can be, saying these are the top 3 or top 5 that we want to see as like the first ones that are tackled. There's different ways to do it, but yeah, I think running through each of them would be an option, definitely.
I mean, when I just glance through this more carefully now, conclude block 1 streetscaping enhancements seems to be relatively straightforward.
Yeah, especially because the design's all done. You've already paid for it. So,
I guess it's
And it looks really
low-hanging
good.
fruit,
so we
to
don't,
speak.
we don't need to do anything at the zoning level. That was going to be my comment. We should just pick all the high priority goals from the back of the book that have nothing to do with the zoning board. Tell Drew that's what staff should work on first. They won't bother us for 4 or 5 years. But on a serious matter, I do think the R5 in terms of our bailiwick, examining the R5 regulations, to me, with the whole focus on trying to increase opportunity for more housing of a reasonable size and cost, that almost should be our number one focus, with the exception of if these proposals come in for the 611 Walnut 33 East North, we're going to deal with that whenever, I'm sure whatever comes in is going to need variations.
Right.
Right.
And that would be there.
Right.
But as Jill, as you pointed out, some of these are ABR items, and maybe there is some overlap, and maybe there is an opportunity we should have a joint discussion, if we can come up with enough items to talk about jointly.
Right.
So you're saying, and I tend to agree, that the second bullet point would probably be the number one for us to label as priority.
Right. And if there is some way to pull from the Optico thing to kind of start zoning in on, okay, they've identified this, and this, and we don't have to hire somebody else to tell us that or something?
Yeah, something that was really helpful from that document is they did a zoning review and pointed to some very specific things in our code that need to be addressed. And so I think that's something that we could very much do at the staff level.
Perfect. And then come, and then we take a look at it and say, okay, yes, no, this, that, or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
I mean, realistically, short of the vacant lots, that's probably the only area in the village that we could put any multifamily without too much opposition, would be the R5 district. Right? That would be our missing middle area if we decided to.
Except if any of the big sub-areas come in, but that's all developer
That's what I
driven.
meant. I'm not talking about those.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anything that's within the village that can be upgraded would be the R5. That there would be less opposition to multifamily in the R5 district than anywhere else in the village, I think, except the vacant lots.
Okay, so we can mark that one as number 1 if everyone agrees with that.
Yes.
Okay, other high priority.
Even though it isn't specifically on this list, although it almost is, although it's labeled design guidelines, but I would be very interested in trying to change the zoning in the industrial park to allow the multifamily options that we talked about.
Yes.
Because until, that's, would then send a strong message to potential developers. If
Yes.
some of these properties do go belly up, some of the buildings are starting to get old. And if someone sees that the village would allow mixed-use development out there, and we have that in our code, it's certainly going to send a positive signal as opposed to our current regs, which don't allow any type of
This is for the
residential.
L1 you're talking about? L1,
Yeah.
L2.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
More the business part, the area we identified,
The business.
that's number
the
2.
north end of the business park. So
Right.
I would think that would be a good one for our board to
I agree.
work on.
Would love to see that, yeah.
And then the ADU
Yeah, I was gonna
construction.
circle
what-
that. I think
Yeah,
that
what
was-
can we, go back and look at that again and see what we can tweak to
Right.
try and
Open it
kickstart
up a
some of
little bit.
that?
Yeah,
That one concerns me and always has, just from a philosophical perspective. I'm very, very troubled with that potential risk in a lot of the smaller lot areas of the village.
Well, can't we address that with size, with land size, acreage?
Well, I'm not sure we want to be at the forefront of that initiative. I mean, there are a couple of communities that have apparently gone down that path in recent years, but I just think it's a very, very potentially risky initiative. Not necessarily in E1 or E2, where you wouldn't even hardly notice, but in your traditional neighborhoods. Well, anyway, we can have that discussion at a later time, but
See, I'm hearing more and more desire for working something, so I guess I'm seeing it from families that want to be able to have a second family with them, for healthcare reasons, for all kinds of, just for family reasons, for healthcare reasons, for different things. So I'd love to look at it further and try to see where,
I think if we change the focus from a rental property to a family property, maybe there'll be less objections by people.
we are kind of family. right
Yeah,
now.
right now.
But you have to have somebody live in, well, I guess that would
We
be a
have to
family.
have someone that would constitute a family is what our
Well, it's already there.
regulations say, yeah. And we have not had any proposals come forward.
But see, I'd like to understand better why, why we haven't, have we tweaked it so, in such a way that it's not manageable, not doable,
I certainly can bring it up again at some point, maybe number 2.
And just the anecdotal feedback that we've gotten at the village level when we have gotten a number of calls about this. And once people hear that it can't be rented out after the fact, they're not interested anymore. And so do with that what you will, but that's just what we have
I
heard.
don't think that would change. that part of it.
Just because, in a lot of the cases, it is a family member at the time, but then if that situation changes, they, again, anecdotally have felt that that was a risk.
Which is the reason we put that requirement in.
Right, but then, is it really working if we can't, no one's being able to do it, I guess, so. And maybe maybe it could be looked at some of the other places that are getting more active in doing it, just to see how they are maybe making it functional.
I can see it certainly could be up for discussion at some point. I mean, we can mark that as one of our priorities down the road. I'm not sure it's number 2.
In the ordinance, what were the FAR requirements?
Ooh, there are requirements.
Because I don't even know how you could theoretically even have one on a 50 by 125 square foot lot when most of
maybe
them
you
are built
can't
out
there.
to the bulk.
Yeah, and so there's a few things with that. There is a size requirement, and then they also have to meet principal structure setbacks. So that right there, in a lot of cases, would limit that.
There almost has to be a minimum lot size that theoretically could embrace such a structure. But I just have significant trepidation on the whole scenario. Impact to the neighbors, increased density, parking problems.
So the size restrictions say that the combination area of all rooms shall not be less than 220 square feet, and then the maximum depends on the zoning district. So it says 35% of the gross floor area of the principal structure, exclusive of any area used for the accessory dwelling unit, would be the maximum. And then there's a different maximum in the CE Country Estate District.
Yeah, from a lot perspective, I think there's probably plenty of lots in the village where the lots are big enough under the regulations we have to allow someone to build something, but there just hasn't been any, I'm assuming, no interest in those areas. Who's ever asking probably is located in the area tight to the downtown. And that's where the lots are very small and
And I think there's other issues with it in terms of financing and things like that I think are getting better. I think that lenders are getting more able to help with that piece of it and stuff, but up until now, I think that's been kind of a hurdle too. Well, I guess I'd like to revisit it, just in terms, and, I can also just do some trying to look at how some of the people, because I'm just seeing so much of it coming up in Cranes and in different publications and stuff about how that's being looked at as an additional way to, find homes for, or living places for, for additional family members or whatever. So I'd like to pursue that at least. And,
I don't have any objection to looking at it again
Yeah.
and seeing what we can do to, and
Sure.
if anything, to
Right.
improve
And who
the
knows, maybe
situation.
we say it can't happen here and, but then it's almost like, why do we have an ADU on the books?
Right.
If it's not functional or something, so maybe it's deciding whether we can have it or we can't have it.
I think when we addressed it, and I don't have a clear recollection, but again, I think on the E1, E2, theoretically, it wouldn't be a significant problem or concern. But in the vast majority of lots, I question whether or not many of the residents, or many of the neighbors want that additional structure that they're looking
And
out
maybe
into the
it can't, you know,
backyard.
maybe it cannot be on certain zoning lots or something, or certain areas, so, maybe that would make it clear, you know, but again, I think just the more clarity we can give to this stuff, maybe the better. Because you are getting calls, it sounds like, so having the rules in place probably makes it easier to deal with those calls.
Yeah, and just one note as well is that there are the separate, you know,
Entrance.
and yeah, there's kind of multiple ways to do the ADUs. There's the separate building, and then there's ones that would be attached to the principal structure.
Which communities in proximity to Lake Bluff have passed a similar ordinance?
Yeah, so Northbrook, I believe Wilmette, and the only other ones would be, I think, Oak Park and Evanston and the city of Chicago.
And Lake Forest, I know, had looked at granny flats and had come up with some rules around them, like coach houses and things like that, or coach house-like structures. So I'm not sure where they are on their rules and stuff.
Yeah, and that's something, I know, it sounds like the consensus is that this is one that we at least want to explore, you know, maybe make no changes to, but that's something we can reach out to Lake Forest about as part of that discussion. And so, yeah, in addition, it is Wilmette, and then Evanston, Northbrook, and further west and north, Woodstock and Antioch.
I guess I'm a little bit surprised that Wilmette passed an ordinance, but not necessarily surprised with respect to Evanston or Oak Brook, or Oak Park.
I think Wilmette has a mix of neighborhoods where I can envision it happening more. You're not thinking of Winnetka, are you?
No,
But,
no,
yeah.
Wilmette, yeah.
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 There are areas of Wilmette, I suspect probably there isn't much support for it, but other areas, I could see where it might receive some support, but I still question with, if we have 300 or 400 lots in the village right now that could easily take a ADU, and not one person has come forward, is there really this pent-up demand, or is there an unrealistic expectation that we're going to be able to create this huge change in density in our immediate downtown? Because I don't think that's realistic. And it is,
I don't think nobody
So-
would want that.
yeah, I don't either. I think there would be an uproar if you, so.
I'm not sure.
But once again, I'm not spending a meeting looking at the rules and seeing what staff thinks is, are maybe items that we could consider tweaking. I think we should do
I'd be
that.
curious to know how Northbrook does, because that's a very suburban, area. So I'd be curious, to see that a little bit, because that's certainly not the density of parts of Wilmette and things like that, so.
Or even how many units they actually have.
Right. And what's realistic in a community of our size, And I don't think, I'm certainly not looking at increasing huge density via ADUs or anything, so not my expectation.
So where are we at with our list? Not too far.
So we have examining the R5 regulations. George had noted looking at changing zoning and industrial or business park as mentioned in the comp plan, and then now ADUs.
What about the redevelopment in the CBD? Is that a bullet point we want to put on to the top? Or just wait for that to happen and then discuss it?
That seems like a reasonable topic to be toward the top of the list.
Yeah, now that we know what's going on Block 3, maybe a look at the Block 2 regulations. You know, we might be wanting to increase the allowable height or the number of stories. I'm not even quite sure what the regs say right now in Block 2, but that, you know, that may be an opportunity to change something that would stimulate redevelopment. And now with this new frame of reference of the
Right.
2 new buildings we're apparently going to have on Block 3, changes the picture, I think, entirely.
Because I was talking to a developer, and, you know, a lot of the one-story rentals that are on North and Washington, it's very difficult in our code to add a second story on all those, so.
Right now,
I
it's
would-
impossible.
Right, I think it'd be really interesting
So
to
the
look.
R5 regs need to, that should be our first task. The
I think so,
R5
too.
regs do not allow,
And there's, you know, developers in our town that would like to just even to add, and that could solve a lot of issues. So I think that should be one of our priorities, and that is the one about really understanding what our zoning says, what are the limitations, and what are the roadblocks that we could work on allowing.
And is that something
Or
that,
exploring.
that can be pulled from Optico too? I mean, they probably, have they kind of put what some of those limitations and roadblocks are?
For R5?
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, we have 5 right now.
right, that's plenty. Changing a whole set of zoning regulations for a district is a time-consuming matter, especially once we start involving the
Right.
public.
And I will say that there are, that I think that list is great. There are 2 other items that we have kind of started to explore.
Okay.
Just as topics of discussion. One, are the heritage tree regulations. I know that
Yes.
member Danley has brought those up before, and we had looked at them at one point, and I think got busy with other comp plan stuff. So if that is of importance, that may be one to discuss. And then also updating the subdivision ordinance. I know that's one that staff has gotten questions from before with developers, and there's sections of that that are not fully clear. So I think that's something that would help staff sort of
Okay.
guide that process, just for what that's worth.
That's plenty of work. Okay.
It is.
George said that's plenty.
Then you'll include the tree ordinance in the heritage trees.
Yeah, the heritage tree, I would likely be in our tree ordinance.
And we don't have to do we don't have to do planning anymore, so it's all zoning from now on. Once this is finally complete.
It can change in a real hurry, Elliot, if one developer comes in for the Stone Bridge.
Okay, that's helpful.
All right. Agenda item number 9, staff report.
I brought it up already just, in our other discussions that we had, but our comp plan will be going to the village board for, second reading approval on Wednesday. The meeting was moved to Wednesday just due to Memorial Day, so
Great.
that will be, exciting if that is approved. And there is one engagement effort left with Tesca as far as like an open house. And so we're in discussions of what that might look like, you know, whether it would be an hour before a PCZBA meeting, or if it would be at an event like the farmer's market where, you know, that kind of started with that community engagement aspect. So,
Sounds like a good idea.
yeah, more to come on that. But other than that, we will start working on some of these action items and go from there. We don't have any public hearing items scheduled at this time for our June meeting, but
You may have a fence
We may have that, and there is one other item that we've been kind of holding back on because we've had so many public hearing items, and that's updating the animal regulations. The village board adopted updated ones, and there's a section of it that should really be in the zoning ordinance. It's not really a change. That section isn't really a change to the regulations. It'll just be a change from putting them where they are into the zoning regulations, because it's more related to the size of the lot or setbacks and things like that for how animals can be kept on properties. So that may be something that comes in June, assuming we don't have a ton of other items.
All right.
And are we still expecting the shovel to hit the earth for the bank property pretty soon, as far as we know?
As far as we know, yeah. Yeah, I don't have exact updates on where we are in that, but I know that they've been in contact with Mike and they've been submitting permit applications.
And has Mr. Dobbins indicated when he might come back for his final?
So, the second reading approval for the development concept plan goes this coming Wednesday or a week from today, but we haven't received anything yet for the final.
Okay.
So I have one question. The gentleman who was here regarding the fence, who was, understandably annoyed about having to be at as many meetings. What was the reason that he started at the village board?
So his plat, the subdivision plat, did not allow fences in certain areas that are depicted on the plat. It's not as simple as saying like the outer edge. It really differs from lot to lot, and his lot is probably the most affected by it because of that language on the plat, but also because of the zoning. He's the only lot with a house on it in that subdivision that has different regulations than the rest, and so.
That went to the village.
It was a
So-
restrictive covenant on the plat.
Oh,
It-
okay.
Yeah,
So
it was language on a
removing-
restrictive
yeah,
covenant, so we're
removing-
removing the restrictive covenant specifically for
okay.
fences, so it went straight to the village board instead of ZBA
Oh,
first.
okay, I was trying to
Yes.
figure that one.
Yeah, so that went to the village board, and when we had talked to him, he hadn't determined, what the details of this fence were. When he gave the presentation to the village board, he was mentioning a privacy fence, and so staff recognized that, there are regulations with that, so we let him know that a 6-foot fence would require a variation as proposed, basically. And so when I spoke with him the next day, I thought I made it clear that this was preliminary and that he would have to come back for final, but
Doesn't
it
seem like you
seems
understood
yeah,
that.
it seems like there was a misunderstanding there, but I will contact him again and walk him through that process. But yeah, we have the variation process, and
So our purview will be just the height or the type of fence?
Just the height.
Just the height, okay.
So did any neighbors from, not in Lansdowne, did anyone call and object? So-
not yet. Letters went out that next day. They were actually hand delivered. So, and yeah, we haven't gotten any comments.
Is Lansdowne all built out totally?
Yes.
It's a shame he even has to come to the village board.
Well, and
Again, for
it's tough
second-
that it's twice, yeah.
Right, but that he would have to take an evening off,
For
given that it's almost a slam dunk with the eliminating that plat restriction, but I guess that's a decision for staff to communicate to the owner, whether or not they need to have him come.
And you need, obviously, it's gonna be, you need a public hearing legally.
For the
For the
variation.
fence, for the variation.
Correct.
Getting back to that text amendment, about 2.5 feet, should we put that on the agenda coming up?
Depends on the,
Well, I mean, we should do it in general.
Oh.
Is it something that should be done, knowing that that will come back to us in the future at some point? Or thinking it will come back to us. Should we just do it as a right?
Let staff decide
Yeah,
that.
typically what we would do is, we would kind of wait for that application to come, and we would recommend that they apply for that text amendment as well. There's not an additional, we don't typically do like an additional fee for that. And we would be able to consider both of those at the same time. Yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of how
Fair
we've
enough.
done it, in the past, but that's something that, you guys can definitely guide on.
Those lots are small.
Lot of opportunities.
But that's a big garage. It's a big garage.
Yeah, he was a new owner, relatively new owner. Yeah, I'm sure it comes up quite often, but you don't really know the options.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not even to scale of his house. It's as big as his house.
right. Well, that's why I'd be curious, we will in a traditional, application, then get the actual square footage of the house and such like that. Because you said there were multiple additions and
Yeah.
just to see. But overall, the informal thing seems to be working, right? I mean, it's not,
I think it is helpful to those who are looking for some feedback before, taking the time and the costs
money.
associated
Yeah,
with
starting with the garage person, absolutely. The fence guy, I'm not so sure, but the garage person,
right.
yeah, we saved him a lot of money by making it informal.
And Shore Acres started as a informal, right? Or am I
It
wrong?
was informal.
Yep.
It started.
Yeah, okay. So it seems like it's working. Without causing an extra meeting that, doesn't feel useful for them or something.
It's still time for them. That's,
Right.
another month. But
Yeah, timing,
Right.
length of time. Good. Make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, that's, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. And you'll get my address correct.